Most of us have swiped right on someone. Maybe it led to a first date that went nowhere. Maybe it led to something that mattered. Either way, the process felt harmless. A photo, a few messages, a meeting somewhere public. The ordinary architecture of modern romance. But here's what we don't talk about. Every time you match with someone, you are agreeing to meet a stranger. Someone whose name you cannot verify, whose photographs may or may not be their own, whose intentions you are reading from a handful of curated images and whatever they've chosen to write about themselves. Most people are exactly who they say they are. The people into night stories were not so fortunate. These are true accounts sent in by real people. Names have been changed. Everything else is exactly as it was told to me. Story 1. This story comes from a woman I'll call Claire. She was 28, newly single after a long relationship, cautiously trying online dating for the first time. She matched with a man whose profile showed someone warm and articulate. Good photographs, thoughtful bio, the kind of profile that felt considered rather than desperate. They talked for 3 weeks before meeting. Long conversations, shared interests. He remembered details she'd mentioned casually, a book she liked, a city she'd visited. He felt, she said, like someone who was genuinely paying attention. They arranged to meet at a coffee shop on a Saturday afternoon. Public, busy, safe. The man who walked through the door was not the man in the photographs. Not slightly different, not an older photo. A completely different person. Different age, different build, different face entirely. He walked straight to her table and sat down, like it was normal, like she should have been expecting him. Claire said, "I think there's been a mistake." He said there hadn't. He said the photographs were his brother's. He said he used them because people made assumptions, and he just wanted a chance to be known for his personality before they saw him. He said this calmly, rehearsed, she thought, like a speech he'd given before. She told him, as evenly as she could manage, that she was going to leave. She stood up. He stood up at the same moment and said, quietly, so only she could hear, that he knew where she worked. He'd looked her up. He said he hoped she'd reconsider because it would be a shame to start things off badly. Claire walked to the counter and told the barista she needed help, loudly. The barista called the manager. The man left before anyone reached the table. Police traced the profile. The photographs were stolen from a real person's social media, someone who had no idea their face had been used. The man had at least 6 other profiles using different stolen identities. Several other women had reported similar encounters. One had not gotten out of the coffee shop before he'd followed her to her car. He was charged with harassment and stalking. The case is ongoing. Claire told me the thing she cannot move past is the 3 weeks. 3 weeks of what felt like real connection, real conversations, real laughter, real vulnerability on her part. All of it built on a lie. All of it a performance designed to get her to that table. She said the most disturbing part wasn't the face. It was how well he'd learned her before she'd ever seen his. This story comes from a man I'll call David. He was 32. The match had seemed genuine. Real photos, real conversation, a first date arranged at a bar he'd suggested. Nothing unusual. He arrived first, ordered a drink, waited. She arrived on time. They talked easily. Good conversation, comfortable silences, the tentative warmth of a first date going better than expected. About 40 minutes in, she mentioned his neighborhood. Not vaguely, specifically. the street. She said she'd driven past it once and thought it looked quiet and nice. She asked if he liked living there. David had never told her what street he lived on. He asked, carefully, how she knew where he lived. She looked momentarily confused, then said she'd looked him up online, just to be safe. She said everyone does it before a first date. She said it casually, the way you'd mention checking the weather. David excused himself and went to the bathroom. He sat in a cubicle and thought through what she could have found from the information he'd shared. His first name, his employer, which he'd mentioned in passing, his general area of the city. Nothing that should lead to a specific street. He came back to the table and, as naturally as he could, asked what she'd found when she looked him up. She told him. She knew his employer, his job title, his LinkedIn profile, the name of the gym he went to, which he had never mentioned, and the approximate floor of his building, which she'd worked out from a comment he'd made in conversation about being able to see the park. She had a document on her phone, notes she'd compiled before the date. She showed him, without being asked, the way someone might show you directions, helpful, unremarkable, completely normal in her mind. David ended the date shortly after. He was polite about it, said he had an early start, said he'd had a good time, said he'd be in touch. He drove home a different route than usual. He did not go to his gym for 2 weeks. Here is the thing that makes this story different from the others. She hadn't done anything illegal. She'd used publicly available information, cross-referenced across platforms, assembled carefully. What she'd built was thorough and methodical, and if the roles had been reversed, it would be described by most people as the kind of research a woman does before a first date with a stranger she met online. David told me he thinks about that a lot. The line between safety and surveillance, how thin it is, how much information we leave scattered across the internet without knowing someone is collecting it. He uses a different name on dating apps now. He mentions his employer to no one until after the third date. He said, I thought I was the one who might need to be careful. I hadn't considered being the thing someone else was careful about.
The last story is the shortest. It was sent to me by a woman I'll call Mia. She was 25. She matched with someone on Tinder, exchanged a few messages, decided the conversation wasn't going anywhere, and unmatched him. Politely, without explanation, the way most people do it, the way the app is designed to allow. She didn't think about it again. 3 days later, she got a follow request on Instagram from an account she didn't recognize. The profile photo was small and dark. She declined it. The next day, another one. Different account name. Same photo. She blocked it and moved on. A week after the unmatch, someone knocked on her apartment door at 11 at night. Mia didn't open the door. She stood in her hallway and asked who it was. The voice said her name. Her full name. Not a username, not a nickname. Her name the way someone says it when they've looked it up. He said he just wanted to talk. He said the unmatch had been a misunderstanding. He said he'd come a long way. Mia called the police from inside her apartment, quietly, while keeping him talking through the door. She asked how he'd found her. He said her Tinder profile had shown her distance as less than a mile from a location he knew. A coffee shop she tagged in an Instagram post that was publicly visible. He'd waited near there 2 evenings and recognized her walking home. He had followed her home, learned her building, learned her floor from watching which windows lit up after she went inside. from a Tinder Unmatch, from a single tagged Instagram post. Police arrived within minutes. The man was removed and charged with stalking. He had no prior criminal record. He was not, by any visible measure, someone who would have seemed dangerous. Mia told me there are two things she changed immediately. First, she set her Tinder distance to the maximum setting rather than the minimum. The closer your radius, the easier it is to narrow your location to a neighborhood, a street, a building. Second, she made her Instagram private and went back through every tagged post that had a recognizable location. Coffee shops, gyms, the road visible in the background of a photograph taken outside her building. She removed or archived all of them. She said it took 2 hours. She said it was the most useful 2 hours she'd ever spent. She also said, and this is the part I keep thinking about, that she hadn't done anything wrong. She'd used the app the way it was designed to be used. She'd unmatched someone she wasn't interested in. She'd posted photos on her public profile the way everyone does. And someone had turned all of it into a map that led to her door. 3 people, 3 matches, 3 very different ways the same app became the beginning of something they never agreed to. A few things worth doing tonight. Set your dating app distance to the maximum, not the minimum. Proximity is information. Go through your public social media and look at your tagged locations the way a stranger would. Make your first dates somewhere you've never been before and wouldn't regularly return to. And trust the instinct that tells
you know something is wrong. It's faster and smarter than any algorithm. If you have a true story of your own, a date that went wrong, an encounter that frightened you, something that started with an app, I want to hear it. Send it to the email in the description. The fire's still burning. I'll see you at the next story.